We
Good
are.
evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to a wonderful Monday night. We are so thankful that you are joining us, and you didn't blow away. You didn't blow away. John was talking about days of wind a couple days ago, northeast where I'm at, like the past 2 days. I could have sworn I saw Toto flying through the sky at one point. It was pretty bad. In fact, we have like a solar cover on a reel outside of our house for our pool, and it was on top of the winter cover for the pool. Like it had picked it up and pushed it onto that.
Yeah, it's
So
probably headed down the road. It was going to be like gone forever.
yeah, no, that would have been that would have been really bad. Not quite that bad, but it would got pretty nasty for a bit. But you're joining with us, and we are very appreciative of that. Obviously, Cubbie is not here tonight, and that is he's recovering. He's recovering. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah,
He's
yeah. So wasn't able to make it with this evening. So we'll just kind of dive right into tonight's topic. I wanted to kind of hit, and I've been seeing a lot of DJs talking about this, is how things shows have evolved from different from what we used to do, and somebody made the comment on Facebook mentioning that couples today do not want DJs from 10 years ago that perform like they did 10 years ago. And I wanted to kind of have that discussion, especially with a lot of you out there that are out there doing, doing a lot of weddings and such. Have you noticed that? Have there been changes? What kind of changes have you noticed? And Dan, this is one of the areas, of course, that obviously you and I are out there doing some weddings in different parts of the country. But we also see a lot of people online and how they're performing and what they're doing. And I find myself a lot of times when I'm watching a video of other DJs performing that 9 chances out of 10 I'm scratching my head and saying, I don't know if that would fly. Whether it's in my market or whether it's the way I do it, whether it's my clientele. Um, I don't know. Do you experience the same thing when you're watching a lot of this, or you're like, hey, that would work here too, or I think I can make that happen.
there's definitely been some things over the years, whether it's been different pieces of equipment or different ideas, and I'll use the example of like the club cannon type of piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of let's assume for a second I'm in a venue that has no problem with the fact of you're blowing the fog-ish. I know it's not fog, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're blowing that, and the venue's cool with it, right? Just the venues that I'm in, it just seems like it would be very out of place. So yeah, I could 100% agree with that, just from the standpoint of I kind of look at it and go, not sure, not sure. Like it looks cool, don't get me wrong. I just don't foresee it having that same full effect.
Mm-hmm. And you see, at the conventions, of course, just a couple of weeks ago, we had Desiree and Brandon Ragosa.
Mhm.
They were on with Big Daddy, and they're bringing a different type of entertainment to it, where he's mixing and he's doing his things, and she's playing along with a is it a lead guitar or bass guitar? So she's basically playing guitar along to it, whether it's a
Yeah.
saxophone or a live performer with that type of thing, and that was something wasn't 5 years ago wasn't a thing. Well, you might have seen some percussionists 5 years ago, but you really weren't hearing too much about that, and people have really been pushing that envelope more to be offering that, and I wonder if is that type of entertainment, is it universal where it goes over well? Is it something that doesn't even go over well in certain in the markets? It's not that popular, but it's a cool idea for a certain segment of their population or their clientele. I wonder sometimes if we fixate and such so much on certain things. As an example, today that somebody posted and said, hey, this song's going to be a banger and it should be great and everyone should have it on their playlist, and a number of DJs were like, yeah, I just added it to my playlist, this is great, it's a great song. No, it wasn't anything special. There's some songs you can hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a dance floor filling one, and it's like, it was okay. It wasn't anything that's going to be like, oh, people are going to be crawling over. It's not the next Uptown Funk for surely. Is it one of those things that
I
our personal bias towards wanting the coolest and funnest and bestest thing does that lead into the idea that today's DJs are better than they were 10 years ago, and the people want today better than that?
Well, I think there's a big difference though between saying we need to be different than we were 10 years ago, and we need to have insert XYZ here. The live performances, basically, I turn to somebody like a Mike Walter to kind of gauge that type of feeling, right? Mike's gonna provide the information. He's gonna have the type of upsales that I feel are something that's going to work. He doesn't come across as the type of person who goes, "Ooh, new gadget. Ooh, new upsell. I'm just gonna throw it in." Like it feels like there's thought that's put into that. Um, Nothing against Jason Jani, but Jason Jani is a type of philosophy in my viewpoint where he's going to see not, ooh, that's the latest, greatest thing. I'm going to do that. But, ooh, I want to push the envelope and try something new and be a trendsetter from that standpoint. So, two ways of looking at the same type of thing. So, I think sometimes when we see social media posts, right, we're seeing it from DJs who have it in place and it works. But I think if we were to ask, what's the percentage of their weddings where that's going out? I think it would really be fine tuned as far as the area that it's concerned.
Sure, I could definitely see that.
So,
You've got those early adapters who find spots for it, but just aren't finding a ton of spots for it.
or even just and I'll use the Jersey guys as an example, right? Like anytime I've been around them, it's just a different breed in a lot of ways. And nothing against you guys, I promise you. But what I've noticed a lot of times is what would be considered an upsell, say in Central PA, what would be considered an upsell has to become standard in their market.
Mm,
And so they've got to look for that extra piece that's going to take their performance to a different level. And that becomes their upsell. And so what happens though for some of the others of us, we look at it and we kind of go, "Oh, I've got to have that." And not necessarily, but I will say you're going to have couples that are going to go, "I want that."
mm-hmm.
And if you don't have it, they're going to bring it in. And I saw this year and a half ago now, I guess it was. Maybe it wasn't quite that long, but I was at a venue that I'm one of the preferred people for. It's completely awesome. I love being at this venue. They brought me in just to do the photo booth, right? They already had the DJ. They wanted me just for the photo booth. And so I went along. I was like, I'm not gonna send my people. I want to go spy on this DJ. I want to see what they're doing.
Sure.
Not recognizing they brought the DJ and a live violinist from 3.5 hours away because they wanted the combo piece.
Sure.
And that nobody locally
Offered that.
is doing anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So people are looking for that. I just don't think it doesn't have to necessarily be the case. I think when we're talking about being different, there's different levels of this.
Mm-hmm.
And some things are definitely going to be perceived and other things are going to be more realistic.
And you're talking
More
about different
commonplace.
levels. I mean, we could be talking about difference in performance. Going from DJs playing and fade in, fade out type of performance, mixing performance, whatever, quick mixing. It could go all the way to the point of having a live with you with your show, or it could be the interactive type things that Joe Bunn has had pictures of, where the bride and groom are shooting these CO2 gun things, whatever. There's just a variety of different things that fall kind of in this category. I look at that and it's like, okay, so that's really kind of cool. Let's just look at the Dancing in the Clouds as an example. It's been around for a long time, variations of it, and it's like, okay, so if people are excited about that and they want it today, that's a neat thing, and yet, I don't know if I've ever had anyone ask for it. And we've had pictures. I had gotten permission from a friend who did it and had some beautiful pictures of it. And it's like, can you get me a couple of pictures so we can use to show what it's like? Because if we sell it, I'm going to come down and rent your device. I'm not buying one, but I'll come and rent it. So we had the pictures, and I've had people say, "Wow, that's a really neat that's a neat idea." I've never had anyone say, can we get that?" It just wasn't a thing. I think we had it for 4 years on our information, and finally, it's like, well, that doesn't go anywhere. I just wonder, is it the type of client that I attract that isn't asking for those types of things or aren't looking for those types of things? Is it because the clients in my area that I work don't know about those types of things? I mean, obviously, in that area, the couple found, or they somehow found out about the musician playing with the DJ, and like, that's what we got to have. How does that all fit together?
I definitely 100% would say that your first inkling of is it the type of clientele that I attract is going to have a huge impact on that. That right there is what's going to be key to any of those new pieces that you put out there. Right? There's just as we often hear online and can attest to, right? That there's probably a couple for just about every budget, right? It's just how many are in your budget range. So, if you're attracting the type of couple who, yeah, that's a great event or a great feature. I don't know if I want to, spend enough to, you know, 5 months worth of coffee in exchange for it, right? Type of thing. That they're maybe more practical in their thinking, and they're looking for more of, what's going to be something that I'm going to look at and be like, yes, I was glad I spent the extra for this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it'd be too much to say that there's not people in your area that know of it or that are interested in it. I just don't think they're the ones that have found you enough to for that purpose.
Sure.
I d- I also don't think that there's couples. I mean, there probably are some couples depending upon what the feature is, but I don't think there's many couples out there right now that are looking for those elements, those new elements, whether you would consider like the dancing on the clouds or the CO2 cannons or anything like that. I don't think there's a lot of them that are out there going, I'm going to choose this person just because of this toy.
And I've
Um,
wondered, and that's a great point, a great direction, because I've wondered at times if our desperation to play with new toys and to get our toys out there and to have fun with them is that sometimes that couples have no idea that some of this stuff is coming. And then all of a sudden it's like, the party's going, and it's like, oh, now, back in the early 2000s when we could go to DJ conventions and buy the YMCA hats, we bought the full kit of those, and you wouldn't really talk about it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's going to be a great time, groomsmen, here, take these, and that kind of a thing. They didn't know it was coming, and there it is, and now they've got some fun pictures of it and making it look like this was something, but in reality, they didn't charge extra for it. They basically are throwing it in there, and it becomes kind of a disingenuous uh, perceived upsell that really never happened, type of thing. I wonder how often things like that happen in the DJ world.
oh, I think there's a lot of it, right? I mean, there are DJs who have whatever the device is because they either got sold on it by some social media post that they saw, or they saw it at a convention and thought, you know what, I want to
I
add
gotta
that,
have that, yeah.
or you know somebody that they look up to, picked one up and said, oh, you need to have this. And so they said, you know what, I'm going to do what they're doing, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have that same response. And the problem, I mean, I don't think this was necessarily the purpose of tonight's topic, but the problem that runs into sometimes with that is that they see that and they think that because they had this whatever, that their event is going to look like this when there are 20 other things that factored into making it look that way. Um, and I think that's one of the downsides, because what I've seen also is people pick up those gadgets, toys, tools, if you will, and they try and promote them, and they promote them well, and they get a couple of people that buy in a year. Is it enough to warrant the cost? You'd have to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen is a lot of times it gets thrown in because they want somebody to start seeing it. They want it to catch on in their area so badly that they're throwing it in so that they get enough pictures and hope that some now people start wanting it. And that's
Hmm.
not, I don't think that's where the couples are at. I don't think the couples are at looking for that
And that
late, new toy.
exactly, and that makes a person wonder now is if we're judging what the clients want today based on what we're seeing online, and people do that quite a bit as far as that. If I see CO2 cannons everywhere, that must mean that everybody loves them and everybody wants them. Well, what happens if it's, as we've been describing here, something that DJs are so desperate to get out there that they've been throwing them in there in hopes that it becomes a sellable item down the road? So now we're basing our opinion of what everybody wants on that. And then the not, of course, is seeing pictures on different people's websites, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, these must be the hottest things out there." Well, no, about a half a dozen DJs were trying it, and then other DJs wanted to be, me too's, and now here we have a thousand pictures from 100 DJs, and none of them, or very few of them, actually have a way of making a profit off these things. It's just a cool toy, and us to be basing that today's clients want this, so they're different than their desires are different than they were 5 and 10 years ago, can be a little disingenuous if you are using the wrong data in.
Yeah. I would be interested to find out though. I would be interested to throw out kind of a um survey, if we could somehow figure out a survey that survey that wasn't biased in a lot of aspects, but to ask them, what are some things out there that you've seen that you would want to have added to your wedding, and get a feeling for, whether your vendor offers it or not, what is something that you might want to have,
Mm-hmm.
and see how many of those elements made their way to their list, to
Do you,
their desire
do
list.
you remember? And maybe when you were first getting to the DJ conventions, the whole idea of the asking the client to, or the couple to, give me 3 words to explain your wedding day. You remember
Mhm.
that idea? Well, the idea behind it, for those of you who don't know, is Peter Mary was a big proponent of this, and basically saying, give me 3 words to how you want to describe your wedding day, or you want people to, how you want your guests to remember your wedding day, and elegant and fun and exciting and whatever. There was a handful of words, but they were the words that continually came up, and then in Peter's case, he would use that as the way to direct his marketing. Okay, these are important to the people that I work with, so I know that I need to be selling fun elegance type of, as an example. When I'm literally, when I met with a couple at a planning meeting, or 2 weeks ago, and I just asked him, not those three the question, but just like, what are you guys looking, what do you want as when you're the next day, what do you want your guests to talk about from the day, what's important? And I've asked that question for 25, 30 years, really. 24 since the early 2000s, and it's always been pretty much about the same. We want just everyone to talk about what a great time they had and how much fun they had on the dance floor. I mean, almost to it, one variation of those two are there. Maybe sometimes there's, maybe they want to have just a great time of socializing, but they want everyone to have a good time, and generally following that up is they want them to have a good, dancing on the dance floor.
Mhm.
That's hasn't changed, and it's just a little tough to wrap a head around. Is like, so they're wanting the same thing. Now, the only thing that would be different then is if it takes different tools or techniques to encourage people to have a good time on the dance floor.
Mhm.
Has that changed where we have to have different tools or techniques?
I don't know if necessarily the tools, but definitely the techniques. And I would say the tools too a little bit, because one of the things that I have seen is talking about, you talk about the fun and having a good time, but uh, I've occasionally also hear the, I want things to look good,
Mm,
right? I want to have a consistent kind of feel throughout, like, not necessarily to the point of a theme, but like when we've talked and dug into, like, okay, what are you thinking cocktails? What are you thinking, prelude? And they really kind of talk about this, continual idea that runs throughout their wedding. And so I think there's that. Now, does that warrant, a new tool necessarily? I don't know, but that theming piece does come into play of okay, we're not having the spin and pukes of the late 90s, right? We're not that's not going to create that same look, that piece, that theming that they've talking about and making it look nice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a piece where things have to change and evolve, but not necessarily have to go the other end. But I do think when you're talking about techniques, 100%, right? Like our clientele are not absorbing media the same way they did, the same way their aunts and uncles, and definitely not their parents, right? So when that's the mentality that you have to think of, look at the songs that are out there right now, right? The songs that are popular, and whether you think they're good music or not, I'm not asking that, but songs are not as long as they were,
Mm-hmm.
right? You go back 20 years, you have a 4.5 minute song, and it's like, great. Now we're lucky if they hit three.
Mm-hmm.
And the artists have admitted to the fact that they're making shorter songs on purpose because people want to consume them in shorter snippets.
Yep.
So how we create that fun atmosphere and those techniques that we have to use should mirror what we're seeing coming from the artist, from the music that people are wanting. That's not to say you can't have a long song, but chances are they're not going to want the long song.
Or they're not
They're
going to
going to
want
want
all of the song.
right. Then that's what I mean by that. Yeah.
And that's probably been one of the biggest evolutions, I think, of performance that I can say I have noticed in my personal shows is that in the early 2000s we went to the convention, and that's where we basically the whole idea of mixing songs and beat mixing, because otherwise it was always fade in, fade out. That's just how it was. CD player over here, CD player over there, and you push play and you slide it across, and okay, we're at the next song. That was about it. And you might do a slam drop or something just by mistake, but once we went to CDs, that's what it was.
Mhm.
Then you got to try to do a little bit of those types of things as we went to the conventions and saw other DJs doing, cutting, bouncing out at a verse chorus out. And I tried to add some of that to the show at some time. And a lot of times a person was like, no, play the whole song. We want to hear that. That was a huge thing for a long time. I think now we've made the evolution to the point because of the world consuming the short TikTok type videos and audio. The 15 seconds in a song is hitting the good part and off you go. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences I think that we have going into 2024 and beyond is how do we implement and be comfortable being a 30-second DJ?
And I'll use a I'm pretty sure it was Dave Lander who did this. For those of you who know, DJ Digital Dave, he gave a presentation 2 years ago now, maybe three at this point. I forget exactly, but he was talking about programming, and one of the things he was talking about with regards to the short edits is you have to know what part of the song to play.
Yep.
If your version of short edit is the intro, a verse, a chorus, and you're out, and the part of the song that everybody wants to hear is 3/4 of the way into the song, you've just ticked off a bunch of people. It's not that they want to hear the whole song, but they want to think that they heard the whole song because they're going to hear the part that they love.
Exactly. If it's the bridge that they want to hear and you just never got to the bridge, yeah.
Exactly. And so this is one of the things that when I have a couple that I'm meeting with and we're talking about first dance, parent dances, anything like that, where we're doing a shortened version because they don't want to be up there for, dancing with all
Four
eyes
and
on
a
them
half
for
minutes,
4 minutes, right? I will go into my editing software and I will take out a verse and a chorus somewhere in the middle. I'll make sure that I ask them, is there any verses you don't want me to touch? Usually it's no, we don't care. And I will take them out and I will take the ending and I will move it up. So now the song is going along and all of a sudden the song's ending the way that you would have expected the song to end. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody realizes, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people are realizing that the song was ever shortened in the first place. So that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind is for those of you that say short edits don't work, or shortened mixes don't work. My question would be, are you sure you're playing the right version, right lengths of the song, the right parts of the song to appeal to your audience.
And that's a great point, because there was actually an area in which I kind of thought that that concept was easy to pick up, because sometimes when you're listening to a song, especially if you've done it for a while, you can usually pick up where the real good hook is. And as I was talking to a couple of DJs, goodness, this must have been last fall sometime, and it was just completely foreign to them. They're like, "Well, what?" They, as an example, we're going to go old school. Back in Black, when you're playing that, depending upon how you're playing it, but most of the time, if you're playing it, that kind of that guitar tick at the beginning, for anybody who knows Back in Black, that's basically that thing that just sets them off, because they know that that's what's coming ahead of the song. Well, for these guys, didn't have the experience with knowing what that was, so for them, they cued it right to the beginning of the song, and it's like, well, that's possible, but for someone who's a real AC/DC person, they're going to hear that kind of that tick on the strings of the guitar, and they're going to scream their head off, because it's quiet enough where they can go, "Oh my God," that kind of a thing. Knowing when is so critical, and I think it's an overlooked skill.
Our couples today, I mean, they're different than what they were. They're looking for those different pieces. There's no doubt about that, or there shouldn't be any doubt about that. And if you're thinking they're the same that they were 10 years ago, I would go back to kind of John's initial question of is that they haven't changed, or is that who I'm attracting? Right? That's the other aspect of that, right? If you're known for being a fade DJ, you still might get a lot of events,
Very true.
and you still might fill your calendar. That doesn't mean that everybody wants that. And I will say to the quick mixing, right? There is the other side of it. There are some couples, albeit I don't think there's very many anymore, but there are some couples who would be like, I don't want you shortening that up. I don't want to hear, a club aspect of mixing. I want to hear, more
My
of a radio style.
my favorite songs the way I listen to them on the radio. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have both sides of that coin. But I do feel that, especially with that last example, you're probably going to see more and more moving away from something like that, or they're going to be the type of wedding where they're going to want, this is for social. We're hanging out, we're chatting, we want music, but if somebody dances, great, and if they don't, we're not worried about it, and we want something there for us while we're playing, or while we're hanging out. And I think that's going to make a difference too.
Certainly would. Certainly would. So I saw yesterday, the day before, someone had posted a kind of a screenshot of their beginning of the dance, I believe it was, but it was like about 40 songs that they had played. And I was looking at that, the different songs, because I'd like to go through and see, it's like in case there's something I knew or didn't know, and such. But because they took all that, and it showed the time it was played, and such, and it showed how long it was played. And that's the part that I actually found very fascinating, is the 7 seconds, 18 seconds, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 20, these, so many of these little were short. A couple of times where it looked like, I'm guessing what they did is they played the hook, and instead of looping, using a loop feature or something to that effect, or cue points to bounce back, it looked like they played the same track twice to get that that part. But it was the amount of, I think the longest was a 2-minute play of a song. Everything in that 40 some songs were under a minute. Most of them were under 30 seconds, which obviously doesn't cover a whole lot of ground in, it's probably half an hour's type playlist, maybe 40 minutes at most. But it was interesting to see how somebody was interpreting today's music consumption, I guess is the best way to describe it.
And there's also performance style DJ, right? So that's the other piece to this, is what you're doing a show, or is what you're doing creating the show, I guess, for lack of better terms, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so there are DJs out there that put on a show. And I think that's the other side to it when we, going back to like our first example with the live performers, right? Those are the DJs and live performers. They're creating a show. And what they do is creating the show. And then there's others that are playing music that is allowing those on the floor to be the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so using those little snippets, I think in some aspects that creates more of that performance style. Maybe not people are turning and watching, but it's like, oh, let me create almost mashups on the fly, right? I'm gonna take that hook and I'm gonna overthrow this during the instrumental of this part of the song, or where there's a break in the song. I'm gonna throw this part on top of it, and then I'm gonna come back out and I can tell you right now, I really hope we don't get to there as an industry, as the norm. I really hope we don't get there as an industry in this norm, because I don't think my brain could
Mm-hmm.
carry that. But like, that's one of those things where if you have that as a skill and you become known for that skill, you could become in demand for that, because there's not a lot that are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean everybody wants it. That doesn't mean that the couples are all going that direction, but that does mean that you're creating something that there is a demand for. And again, the toys that we have, there's a demand for it. It's just, is it enough in what you're doing? And is it always going to be catching the eye enough to keep it
Relevant
worth it?
and worth it, yeah, to
Well,
be
relevant,
booking
yeah.
booking enough shows. You mentioned, of course, the idea of being a performer, where basically it's like, hey, and not to, I don't want to make it everyone, but the idea that the performer is kind of on stage and, hey, everyone, let's look at me, that this is, or this is, the fun is happening here. And there's some with the DJ personality is more laid back, and that they're not the center of attention. And it's been Byron Gunter. I don't know if you follow him, but he had a booth at a bridal show a week or two ago, where he had a sign that basically talked about that they were not the center of attention. You as a bride and groom are the center of attention, type of a situation. So I think that that is definitely out there, and for some people, they're going to gravitate towards an entertainer who is the spotlight. I mean, I've had times where people have expected me to be like, they went up there hooting, and it's like, that's not my style, that's not my personality. But that's what they were after, and it became a semi uncomfortable night. And then there have been times where even what little bit of microphone I do, and some of the things I do, they're like, you don't need to talk on a microphone, just play music, we're good. There's all sorts of levels, and there's clients for everyone. It's just, is there enough? But
What's
yeah,
funny is it's the same argument that we had 20 years ago.
yeah,
So I remember when I started, like when I was starting in the industry and I was starting in my town. So that was probably a little bit more specific. So where I was living at before, probably not as much. But when I came back, that was the height of a lot of that interactive piece,
mm-hmm.
right? And there's interactivity, and then there's interactivity, right? I realize I used the same word there, but there are people who are doing things in such a way that it was enhancing the evening, and then there were others where it was like, everybody look at me, I've got a funny hat, I'm leading the conga line, I'm on the floor more than I'm playing the music, and that was that style.
mm-hmm.
And I remember using almost that same wording of, when you get me, you're the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out. In fact, I remember using this on one of my brochures. I'm not here for 15 minutes of fame,
Mm.
right? And the main point that I wanted to make was, without calling that other DJ out, I am not. Well, actually, there was two in our town. I am not either of them,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it because, not that I didn't think it was a good idea, I just knew it wasn't something that was my style, and I didn't want to be confused or get in that uncomfortable situation that you were talking about.
Right. Yeah.
And
So,
eventually the style passed, and I was glad.
so you're saying my rubber chicken routine is no longer wanted?
one of them had the rubber chicken hat and would be out there with the chicken dance while it was going. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's my shtick right there, man. Right in the middle of that one.
Yeah. In fact, I think he still gets it out every once in a while, the one DJ. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
But no, it is, again, it's different. The one of the things I think that's difficult for us in this business is because it is ever evolving, because our couples are in a way ever changing, but they're not changing all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I would
And
agree.
I think it's most I want to be careful how I word this. A lot of the trends I think that we've had developed and have gone over the years, by the time that they're really almost on the way out, they come back again. Right? Like, so for a lot of us, right, we can be on the cutting edge and we can say they're definitely different than they were 10 years ago. But then there's going to be other DJs out there who are going, yeah, but your 10-year ago couple is my current couple.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's where I'm getting. And then by the time that they're back to that pushing the envelope, it's where the other, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of goes around.
It does.
And
Yeah.
I think that's some of it, because we can't with any certainty say everybody's going to do this. And we really can't use what we're seeing on social media to be that other viewpoint of that. And one of the cases that I'll use, and a lot of us are very familiar with this, think of how many of your weddings are in a barn.
Mm-hmm.
And think of those people that you're thinking that has the latest tool, the cannons, the dancing on the clouds, etc. How many of them are in a barn? I'm not saying that they don't, but you know, even something as simple as the type of venue that your client is going for could give an indication on the types of things that they might be interested in.
I
They're
think to definitely to a point of what they could be interested in, but I think it also, I think we have to keep in mind that we have to have, in some cases, more flexibility. And I was thinking back to, when we were started in the 20 years ago type of thing. Really, our flexibility at that point in time was having an understanding of music from the 50s through 2000, in the early 2000s type of thing. We had to have the flexibility to be able to play from any of those genres. Well, obviously, we don't have to play from some of those genres as much as we used to, because those audiences have aged out. But I think today the flexibility really comes from knowing when to hold them to the end of the song and when to fold them and get out after the hook. Kenny Rogers in there for you. I just brought it all together. But I think that flexibility of being able to read that crowd and know that, okay, so I'm in a barn tonight. Does that mean that I'm going to be now, doing more of a full song play? Or do I have a crowd where when I'm working this side of the room or for this part, I'm doing a certain way, and then when I'm over here, I'm doing it a little bit different way, and then I can maybe intermingle a little bit, but I really have to have an understanding that I could be playing three distinctly different parts of the show during any hour to cater to a different part of the audience. That flexibility, I think, is going to be, and it is big.
Well, definitely when it comes to techniques. I think that what I was referring to was more of like the tools that you're using and the overall picture, I guess, if you will. But definitely the techniques, right? Because you could have one couple who exactly as you said, is very much into that quick mixing clubbish type of feel, and then you, on the flip side, you could have somebody who is wanting full length country songs, right? And they both use the barn, um, for different different reasons, different feels. So you're right. There is that difference from that aspect. Yeah, stop there.
Yeah. I think that's I think if the probably the biggest takeaway from tonight is I think they are right when they say that couples today or guests today are looking for a different DJ than they were 10 years ago. The flexibility has changed. It's still, we need to be flexible in what we did back then, but I think that our flexibility and our playback has changed. As Dan mentioned earlier, the lights, yes, there are some things in lights that have aged poorly, spin and pukes. And some of those will be a detriment to your business. But there's other things, and looks that have evolved from those times. That in some areas, the booth with the TV in front is a hot item. In other areas, people have felt that their guests and clients have moved beyond that, for whatever that means. I couldn't tell you for sure. I mean, I'm out there. I'm still using my sock puppets throughout the show, and people just love it, man. It's just great. But
only when you have the light on it.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. I like to use a lighter, actually, so that way, it really, brings out its eyes. It's great.
Of course, you got to have a little element of danger.
Of course. And then, just have so much fun with those nice flammable cotton socks. So yeah, flexibility, I think, is going to be the key, and to understand that as I do a lot of these workout things, and some of them are connecting through Apple, and there's times where their workout music is, it's TikTok songs. And they're talking about, this one had 80 bazillion views on it, and it was, seen 100,000 million times, and everyone in a whole country of China saw this. Whatever. There are a lot of people seeing these little 30-second things, and a lot of the people who are seeing those things are the guests, the younger guests at these events we're doing, and they're used to 30 seconds of that song. They're not used to the whole song; they're used to the correct 20 seconds, 30 seconds of the song. And we need to be effective. I think we've got to know that and be prepared to perform in that way for that audience. And Dan, that sounds like it's a lot of research and a lot of. It's not just like
people say we just press play.
Yeah, it's not just taking a playlist and saying, "Oh, look, here's the top 10 songs. Let's play all 10 of those." All right, great. There's 1 hour gone.
No, I also, we talked a lot about the techniques and stuff like that, but I think there's another side to it where they're still looking for a professional.
Mm-hmm.
They're still looking for somebody who's going to carry themselves. And one of the questions that every so often I get asked, which makes me think that this is still an issue out there, is they start talking to me. Well, are you going to be the MC also? And in my head, I go, thought it was a given here, but okay, let's talk about that. Yeah. When you hire me as your entertainer, DJ, I'm also the MC, and I make sure everybody's understanding what's going on, and et cetera, et cetera. So those skills are still necessary. Those skills are still a required element to what you're doing, and still become an important piece to make sure that you have. So that professional aspect and those types of things are something that are not going to go away.
Sure.
That you need to make sure that you are taking the time that, okay, I'm going to stay up in the latest, greatest, yada, yada, yada. Make sure that you've got the other tools in your back pocket ready to go. That's going to keep you in that professional light. That's going to keep you, speaking well and eloquently and that kind of thing where you're needed.
Good point. Very good point. The MC, while it has improved, I don't think that has changed quite as much. A competent MC 10 years ago is still desirable today for most events.
Well, I mean, case in point, look at even just last night, right? We had the Oscars, we had Jimmy Kimmel, who was doing it for the 4th time, right? You had Billy Crystal, the ultimate MC, who did, his award shows how many times? I mean, it was just like they're known for what they're doing, and they're consistently delivering a great product. And they're on their shows nightly, doing their late night stuff. Not Billy Crystal, but Jimmy Kimmel and that. And so, right, like that's why they're asked to do these high profile type of elements. And so there's other parts of us being on the microphone that maybe get away from that formality or that piece to it, and that someone could say, well, I don't need that. But at the core of that formal event, that's where you're going to be called on to have that proper piece in place.
And you definitely want to have the tools ready and well versed for such a thing, because If you don't, yeah, it will show.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, let's wrap up here. So we got Hanging with Howie coming up next here. I think Howie's going to be able to make it. He was saying he's got some of that nasty weather in his market, and he's been up and down with electricity. So they'll be that's at DJNTV.com/chill, and you guys will be able to pop out there in a couple of minutes. The link will be in the chat for those of you who are out there watching and you want to hit that. It's a Zoom room, and everyone kind of goes in there. They record about 20 minutes, half hour, and then after that, everyone turns their camera on and chit chats. Tomorrow night we'll have. Big Daddy's going to be on at 9 o'clock Eastern. Then at 9:30 Eastern, we're going to have the Boston Johns record roundup will be on. And then after that, they'll be doing a recording of the Tuesday Night Music Show again in the chill room, the DJNTV.com/chill. So you guys can go check that out. Let's see, 2 weeks, not tomorrow night, but the next week, we're going to be bringing Ben Stowe back for a 4-episode spring session here. We found 4 weeks that Ben's going to be available. And I went and I found probably 4 of the best topics that most people have been asking about and such. So we're going to be digging into those topics starting next Tuesday night. That will be happening. They will be happening at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. So it'll be Big Daddy and then Ben Stowe and then the regular Tuesday night show, the recording of the music show. So that'll be going on this week and next week. So, Dan, let's wrap it up and get Howie and the guys on.
Sounds good, Ben. Thank you very much. So here's the deal. You know what your assignment is. Checking out all these shows. We just made it easy for you. John gave you the lowdown so you know exactly what's coming, when it's coming. And I will say this. I'm excited for the return of Ben Stowe. That should be some good stuff for sure. Not saying the other ones are. All right. So anyway, have yourself a great night. It's been our pleasure. We'll see y'all next time.
Good night, everybody.
Everybody.